Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Pro Wrestling Inside Now. This is our Tuesdays wrestling talk and the battle royal of discussions. The first one we need to talk about. Everybody's been asking about it. They asked about it last night, but we had special guests, Brian Young and Dan. What was the guy's name again?
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm just getting old. It's not that I don't. But
they're the authors of the book Wrestler's Wrestler.
Yes,
very good.
And we didn't get time to talk about it. But Jack, let us know what happened Saturday night, Russell South.
Saturday night, we had a heck of a crowd. It wasn't a sellout, but it was close. So we did really well. Had a great crowd response. 6 solid matches. People were already the next day were already asking about reserving front row tickets. So yeah, you can't ask for anything better than that. We did have made one change for because of some scheduling issues on the next show, and we wound up putting Johnny Chaos, who was our guest last week, and a young Lou Taylor, who is one of our trainees, who's only had a handful of matches. And we were kind of scared about putting him in the main event. Didn't know if he would, be able to handle that pressure or not. But I'm telling you what, he and Johnny absolutely tore the house down. There wasn't a person in that building that was in their seats when that match was over. It was fantastic.
That is good to hear. Now, their return, Russell South returns, I think June 15th. Is that the date?
12th, June 12th.
So Saturday, June 12th, Russell South, again, Arab, Alabama, Arab Recreation Center. This is the chance for everyone to get there. You can get there, and good matches, great crowd. Get there and watch.
We will be posting a link up hopefully by next week with the how to pay in advance for the ringside tickets, and we've got a little bit of other news that will be released after this week on the website. So y'all follow us on Facebook and check us on the website, and we'll have a kind of a major update coming.
That's good to hear. Also, folks, write down this date. We're not going to tell you much about it, but write this date down. Friday, October the 4th. Friday, October the 4th. Write that down. We'll be telling you more about it in the weeks to come right here. Friday, October 4th.
I'm acting like I don't know, but I know.
So write it all down and get that date then. And so, you know what? Go ahead and write it on your book and be available for that day. If you are an insider, you enjoy Pro Wrestling Inside Now, you will enjoy what's coming on Friday, October the 4th. All right, Rodney, it is time now.
Well, Michael Barr was wanting to know if there was any gas in that area so that if he got up there, he could actually get back home.
Yes, Taco Bell. Everybody has free gas at Taco Bell.
Yes. Hi, October isn't my birthday. That's what Kevin Finley said.
All right, Rodney. Let's go ahead and start this, and we'll talk to the insiders in just a moment. Rodney had an idea that he wanted to talk about this evening on this episode, and Rodney, take it away, and then me and Jack will step in later on.
And for the rescue or the save, whatever it might be. Right about the end of the 1980s into 1990s, wrestling took a shift where the promoters were the pendulum swung from the promoters to the wrestlers. It became more of a wrestler end, and it probably was more due to the fact that corporate America had taken over the wrestling business. I'm talking about Ted Turner and TBS buying out Jim Crockett Promotions. And with that, when people with less wrestling experience allowed the wrestlers to start calling more of the shots, it became it came almost one-sided in the approach. Ric Flair, Sting, and I'm not going to begrudge them with the money that they made, and God bless them for it, and not to say that they didn't deserve it, but as the promotion, especially once Eric Bischoff got there, really decided we're no longer going to develop new talent. Our main objective is to maintain the status quo with established names, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Roddy Piper, etc., and really neglect the building of the new talent coming in. And I think that was a terrible oversight on their on their part. Before that, Ole Anderson, Dusty Rhodes, Bill Watts insisted on having developmental events, which we took care of more or less. And it's not that we have any bitterness because they discontinue, and that was not what my point is. But as the wrestlers started dictating more of what they would and would not do, and started being more of an influence in it, they were all about them and not for the future. If you think back of what we were talking about with Ric Flair, and we've been chronicling his career, when he first started and went to Mid-Atlantic, there were people there to help him. Rip Hawk, Sweet Hansen, and then, the list goes on and on of people that he was able to work with. Well, the new guys after, the demise of WCW had nobody to work with. All of those guys just sort of disappeared. Hulk Hogan, and Savage, they really never passed the torch to the next generation at all. They just abandoned. I'm not getting paid anymore. I'm not interested anymore. I'm walking away. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's the way it was, because when we were growing up, Jackie Fargo passed his torch to Jerry Lawler. Lawler may not have gotten over as well if it wasn't for the fact that Jackie Fargo got him over and like passed the torch. You had Tojo Yamamoto, who trained Tommy Rich, and he trained Bobby Eaton. He trained Jerry Jarrett, and they teamed with a more established people. As you got into the 90s, they were not doing that anymore. They were not coupling the up and coming with the established stars. They were like to say, pass on to the torch. And I know everybody say, I'm protecting my spot. When they wasn't protecting their spot, they were eventually ending their own careers and cutting it way down. Even Vince McMahon, he neglected the developmental side, especially during that same time. He was just totally, I'm just going to rate other people's talent. Well, it came to the point he couldn't rate it anymore. So eventually he had to do his own performance center to try to develop this talent. And again, it's not passing the torch from established people, experienced people to the next generation. They're now learning from each other, which is a very much difference, if you know what I'm saying. So does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I have heard guys, and I'm not going to bring any names out, but while we were there at the developmental territory, which was called developmental towns at the time. There was really, they had a wrestling school. I think, what was the wrestling school's name, Jack? I can't remember it at this point.
Gosh,
Power plant.
The power plant. Yeah, the power plant. Jody Hamilton and I don't remember who else was there because we never went to the power plant.
Buddy Lee Parker.
Buddy Lee Parker, that's right. They were the trainers of the power plant, and we actually took the wrestlers, and we had 6 matches. They gave us 4 matches of the guys that were being developed, the guys that were being trained, and they gave us a main event or something in the high schools and gymnasiums and stuff like that.
And in some cases, they gave us nothing. They gave us absolutely nothing, and Dad would take the card to Dusty or take it to Bill Watts, and he said, "Would you pay to see this?" He said, "Well, no." He said, "Well, nobody else is either. We just need a main event so those guys can have somebody to wrestle in front. If we put this card out there, we're going to have an empty house. They just as well to train in the backyard."
And so I would, to be honest with you, I would not stay in the dressing room too often. I always found me another room and be there because I heard these words being said. Well, I'm not going to put them young guys over. And what was very hard about that is that the guys were saying that if the same thing would have been said in the 70s and at some cases when those guys started, well, they would have never got their chance. It was to a point of, did the wrestlers not want to pass the torch on to someone else? Because Richard Hood said it because the money was larger. But really, if you take what Ole Anderson was making, what Wrestling too, there was times that Dennis Condrey made $10,000 a week while he was in Mid-South Wrestling. Yep. So there was big money then as well. But the territory owners knew the longevity of the business, and they made sure that, let's say, for instance, people put Michael Hayes over, that people put Dusty Rhodes over. And it got to a point where these promoters, these corporate promoters, did not understand the wrestling business enough to know that it needed to go to that next step. Jack, does that make any sense to you?
It makes complete sense. It was never my job back then to put myself over. It was my job to put my opponent over, and in turn, his job to put me over. It was not about us. It was about what was best for the business, and we lost that. We lost, guys took it for granted that the business was there. There's huge money involved. So I'm just going to take care of me. I'm going to make me look like a superstar so that I can get more and more money. And that's where we wound up being where we're at because they quit caring about the business.
Yeah, exactly. The guy right over my shoulder here, one of the biggest fights he ever had with Jim Herd was over Ric Flair. And he said, if I knew that being world champion would have get me $700,000 a year, I would have been world champion a long time ago. And it became to the part where, I just say it, marks were running the show.
Yep.
And they were easily manipulated by what they felt was the stars. Hulk Hogan really called his own shots. Not to say that that's a bad thing, because for a year and a half, they had it rocking and rolling. Yep. But after that year and 7 months come up, it started failing. Now, don't get me wrong. They did get some people over that came from developmental. Diamond Dallas Page came from there, and then they killed him off. Just as soon as he started getting over, no, we're gonna turn him. We're gonna kill him off. And he had it, and it was legitimate. He was getting over, and then all of a sudden, that they decided, well, we're going to turn him too, and then it destroyed it. It absolutely ended it. In fact, after that, really, Dallas Page was really never seen as a big star anymore.
But he could have been.
Yeah,
and even when he got to WWF, he could have been, but they didn't do anything with him because of the same problem. The WWF guys, I'm not going to put him. I don't want to put him over.
Yep.
And it just made, and that's what happened to the wrestling business as a whole. No stars are developed today because the other stars wouldn't put them over. They just retired.
And it's that passing, and that's that passing of the torch. Think about it. What would have happened with Ric Flair if he didn't team with Rip Hawk? I mean, Rip Hawk was actually the booker. So he was able to instill certain things to him. And if you ever want to know about how coupling with people or partnering with people that knew what they were doing, you got to see the Bill Superstar, Billy Graham story. He tells you exactly what was going on. He tells you that with Dr. Jerry Graham, it's what started him in motion. And so, like I said, that passing of the torch, I mean, we think about it. Tojo with Jerry Jarrett. Now, did Jerry Jarrett do that because, oh, well, I don't know, Tojo needed my help? No, he needed Tojo's help and Tojo's name to start to get over. Tommy Rich is the same thing. Bobby Eaton, all the same thing when they were starting with Nick Goulas. And like I said, it was passing that torch. Think about it. Jerry Lawler started, and who was his partner? It was Jim White. Sam Bass was his manager. There was a reason. It was, again, passing that torch.
And Jackie Fargo passed the torch to Jerry Lawler.
Yeah.
And so it's very important for an older established wrestler to give back for the years that they have and the years that they were given, that people put them over. Now it's time for them to repay the favor. And there was a time in the 90s that did not occur. And that's the reason we've lost stars, so to speak, as what we had in wrestling. Because Ric Flair could have got 10 people over in his last 5 years in the wrestling business. And they'll say, well, he put Shawn Michaels. Well, Shawn Michaels was already over. They really didn't need to put Shawn Michaels over Ric Flair. They needed to put Ric Flair with a younger guy, do a program with him for 13 weeks, or even do a 26-week program with him to be able to get that guy over. Sure. Shawn Michaels didn't have to get over. So I don't know that it was a smart idea to have a retirement match with Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels, because Shawn Michaels didn't need to be over. They needed to put that with somebody else. Now that's just my opinion of it, but it's a very slippery slope.
Well, think about when Ric Flair did his job and helped get somebody over, and that would be at the first Clash of Champions with Sting. He actually that match made Sting. He was kind of halfway there, but that's what set him apart. Yeah. And if you think about it, where else was that done? Where else did and I'm not trying to criticize Flair, because lots of times promoter was, the promoter was, or the booker was calling the shots there. And even in WWE, they're still calling the shots. And so it was just amazing that they just lost sight of the future and come to the end of all that big, huge expansion with WCW, and then it was over. I mean, it was over just as quick as it got started. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think that I'm not sure what would have happened to WCW if Time Warner did not buy Turner Broadcasting out. They might still be going today. Not sure. But when Time Warner got there, their first project was get rid of that wrestling company.
It's kind of sad, because when you look at Magnum TA and you look at the people who put Magnum TA over to get him over, and not just Mid-South Wrestling 2 got him over. Wrestling 2 was an established star. Wrestling 2 was the man in the area. And then when he turned on them and they did that whole program with him, it made Magnum TA. Well, then when he gets to the Carolinas, Wahoo McDaniel puts him over.
Right.
Again, Wahoo passes the torch to Magnum TA. Wahoo was over big time in that, especially in that Carolina territory. He was over big time. So he passes the torch. Then he goes to Tully Blanchard. Tully Blanchard puts him over like $1 million. That makes him look great. And then Ric Flair even makes him look like $1 million. So they knew how to do that then. And it was being done. It was just sometime in the 90s that it stopped. And Rodney talked to me about that, I don't know, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I said, it's a very interesting story. And the pro wrestling is not as easy as people want to make it out to be. It is a very complex business. It's just not running down guys' names and Joe's going to go against so-and-so. And I think they're doing that on AEW. I think they just write down things. I don't know if they actually have a storyline for that.
In the end, that development wasn't just a WCW or a WWF problem. This started happening to every single territory. In the end, it was talent that was the problem. Many stayed there too long, and the ones that replaced them they were not that good to follow up. They were not good replacements because they had not been developed. Same thing happened to Continental. Same thing happened. Eventually got Jarrett. World Class was the same thing. UWF. I mean, Jim Duggan was there till the very bitter end. DiBiase was there pretty much to the very end. They were just there too long, and there was nobody there to not replace them, to take their place, to take that position, because you get stale. And it's not that you can't come back. It's like, and that's the reason territory system works so well. If you had somebody, say Jerry Lawler was in Memphis and they needed to get him out for a while, well, he could go work Texas for 3 months and then come back and be just as over as he was before. But if he stayed there that 3 months, the longer he stayed there, the more stale and routine it was for the wrestling fans. It wasn't a special thing anymore.
It is a very interesting concept about pro wrestling, and like I said, it's not as simple. It is not as simple as people want to make it out to be. There is a lot of variables to pro wrestling that makes it work or makes it not work. And believe us, all three of us have done things that didn't work. So we know why it don't work. Mm-hmm. And we have done things that did work. But in every town is different. And I think that is the reason why the major organizations today cannot get the ratings they used to, because the fans in Chattanooga like something completely different than the people in New York. And if you're doing everything for New York, well, then the people in Chattanooga don't care anything about what they did because it doesn't match. Every territory is different. We went to so many different territories. When we went to Florida and they did that, I guess they did a 50-50 deal between Jim Barnett and Eddie Graham. Those matches in Gainesville, Florida were completely different than the ones we just watched in Georgia. So the booking was completely different because he knew what it took in Gainesville to make it draw. And our father always said, you cannot do the same thing in Augusta, Georgia. You could do it in Macon, Georgia. Something you did in Augusta, you did in Macon, you might kill the territory. You might just kill the town. You have to know that, and you have to know the town. So I don't know that they'll ever get to that point until a territory or someone that's going to run wrestling decides, okay, we have to take each individual town and we have to test, and then we keep on testing that market until we see what works. Then we'll get the people. Now we'll have 400,000 people watching the show in Birmingham, Alabama. Now we'll go to Memphis, Tennessee, and we'll do it completely different. Now we've got 500,000 people watching there. And that's when you're going to come back up to what wrestling used to be. I guess before we run out of time, because we've been talking for 21 minutes, let's go see what everybody had to say. Richard Hood is with us. How you doing, Richard? Chaplain Freddie, Chaplain Freddie Rooster Roper. I'll get that name right in a minute. Mimi Barboza.
That's a great name. We still love that name.
She came to the show the other night and ghosted me.
Oh, how dare her.
Of course, I never got to come out. I was so busy in the back.
Stuart Kemp is with us as well. Jonathan said the West Brothers, Jack, you're okay.
Johnny Chaos, I guess we know the finish of the next match.
Oh, boy.
Let's see.
Is that it? Will that be involving, since we talked about ladders matches the other night, will be involving a ladder?
I'm trying to find a 40-foot ladder now.
By the way, yes, Michael, Russell South was a success. And June 12th, write that down as the return match is there at the E-Rab.
What date was that? What date was that?
That's June 12th. That's Saturday, June 12th is the start time, 7 p.m.
7 p.m. start time.
7 p.m. start time as well. Victor Nash is with
Chaos in a blindfold ladder match. It's going to be fantastic.
Michael Bard, we already said something about him saying something. Hello from Chicago, Illinois.
Hey.
Right.
Yes.
I'm not even going to try. Kevin, to get that name right.
I don't want to mess your name up either, Kevin. Welcome, Kevin.
Yeah, welcome, Kevin from Chicago. Another thing. We were talking about the difference in wrestling. The people in Chicago like stuff completely different than what they liked in Atlanta, Georgia. Completely different. It was not the same wrestling fans. Dr. Philbo Grice is with us from Dothan, Alabama. Kevin Finley said in October, October isn't my birthday. I'm sorry, it ain't a birthday gift for you. Not a birthday gift.
But you can celebrate it.
With sure. Yeah. If you want to celebrate it in the month of October. Let's see. Everybody saying hello to everybody. Rita Cantrell is with us. Rita.
Hey, Rita.
How are you doing? Yvonne Burns is with us as well from Western Pennsylvania. Charles Alford. Hello, gentlemen. He's listening.
He's got his ear.
He's got his ears.
Up against the phone or computer, whichever he has.
All right, here's Kevin Finley. He's got a question to ask us. He said, okay, my question is, Cornette hated comedy wrestlers such as Santino and Pockets, Orange Cassidy. Where does the Fargo stand? Are they an attraction or comedy wrestlers? Jackie Fargo was not a comedy wrestler. He was never a comedy wrestler. here's the difference, and I'll say this, and then I'll let Jack and Rodney do this. Here's the difference between that. I have to look at Orange Cassidy, or I guess Jim Cornette calls them pockets. It makes no absolute sense to be in an athletic contest and put your hands in your pocket. It just makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, and no, I know where they're going with it. I understand where they're going with it. But most people look at it and go, what in the world are they doing? And I'm talking about those 800,000 people that make sure they watch their show every week. I think they got 1 million now that watch that show each and every week. But here's the thing. Is that guy, can you put him on a main event somewhere and somebody buy a ticket to see him? Will they watch him for free? Yes. But will they buy a ticket to go see a guy named Orange Cassidy in the main event of a show? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But that is a comedy. And Santino, completely a comedy routine. They meant for him to be a comedy routine. They meant for Sonny Fargo, Roughhouse Fargo, to be crazy. And he was the only person that did it because they would draw a house because they said, we're going to go get him out of the nut house because this man's nuts. He's crazy. And he made sure he was crazy when he got to the matches. What do you think, Rodney?
Well, in the beginning, Jackie was not a comedy act. Now, later on in his career, in the latter years, he was an attraction, and he did a lot of that comedy stuff in his matches, mostly making fun, a fool out of Jimmy Hart. But in the beginning, no, it was not. But later in his career, he was, because he did become a special attraction because Jackie wasn't going to work every week. He's not going to work every single night. He would come in, he would work Nashville, and then he worked Memphis, but he's not going to do the whole round. It's beyond it for him at that point. But yeah, in the beginning, no, he was not a comedy routine. He was very serious and a super draw all throughout Tennessee and other places that he was in. And like Brent was saying, once somebody had beat him up, such as the Garvins, done a number on Jackie, he's going to go to the Nut House and get Nut House Fargo in, and then they're going to draw a big house. And Nut House comes out and runs around Terry Garvin. He passes out, and the Mid-South Coliseum is sold out.
My grandfather was a huge Jackie Fargo fan, so I grew up watching Jackie Fargo. Jackie Fargo would do things that were funny sometimes, but it wasn't a ha-ha, that's funny kind of thing. It was a ha-ha, Jackie's fixing to kill that guy kind of thing. So there's a huge difference there. Jackie never did anything he did for laughs. You know, he did it, some kind of little lighthearted stuff or whatever in a way, but you knew he was serious as a person. You knew that as a wrestler, he was serious. He was fixing to kick somebody's tail. And that's where the comedy is different from the serious wrestlers who may have a tad of a comedic edge to them like he did. You know, that was his personality that was coming through. But that was not the style of wrestling he did.
And by the way, Jim Cornette, he doesn't have too much room to talk. I mean, look at the comedy crap that he did. Just go back and watch his stuff. He did jokes and all kinds of stuff, you know, that we didn't even like, especially when he turned babyface for some reason. He became just a jokester. Right. You know, talk about the wrestlers, talk about them. And don't tell your jokes. Number one, he couldn't even make it on television today. I don't believe some of the stuff that he said.
Bobby Heenan, who's mentioned in our comments here, was one of those few guys that could be funny, and it got over because he wasn't saying the things, and he didn't come across as a comedian.
Yeah,
it was like, you know, these are my random thoughts that are out there, and you're laughing at them. I don't want you laughing at them. Because I'm serious, you know, when I'm saying this. You're making a joke out of it. I'm not joking, even though it was funny. So, yeah, you know, there's a fine line there. Bobby understood where the line was.
And there's a fine line between just slapstick comedy and saying something that you really believe.
Yep.
And you have to believe it. Bobby Heenan, what he was saying, he believed.
Yep.
And, you know, they didn't write it for him. So he believed it. Charles Alford said, so you all were the original developmental territory. I would think that was probably the developmental towns. I don't know that anybody had done that prior to that.
No.
I think they called us the king of the spot shows. I believe that's
Exactly
what
right.
they used to call
And
us.
a lot of the guys that were there for quote to learn, they didn't realize what was going on. They would complain and just bellyache to no ends. And we told them, and Dad was very upfront and honest with them. If this goes and we stop doing these, you will be gone. They closed them down and they were gone.
Yep. I know. I was booking a show in Alabama at the time that the power plant was going strong, and they sent several guys over for me to use on my shows every week. I would have at least 4 guys a show. Brian Adams used to come over with them, Adam Baum, and that's where we started our friendship at. He didn't tell me what to do or tell me what to do with them. He just wanted to make sure that they didn't argue with what I said. And it was a good relationship we had, and those guys I think learned in that instance.
And that's what they need today. They're going to have to put these guys, especially when everything opens back up, they're going to have to put them back on the road. Yeah. That's where you're going to learn. You're not going to learn just wrestling once a week. It's never going to happen. Well, I mean, that goes for anything. If we only did something one day a week, if we're in the printing business and we only do one day a week, well, by the time Monday comes back around, we'd forgot what we did on Monday. I mean, we even forgot what I got over. Hi, everyone, from Joel Bateman. We already said Richard said the money got larger. Let's go on down. Joel Bateman asked how everyone's doing. Michael Barr asked this question. He says, was it tougher to find someone to train young people to become wrestlers in the late 70s and 80s as opposed to the wrestling schools? Yes. Jack, how hard was it for you to find somebody?
It was extremely difficult to get started. And I went through 2 different places. One guy that was just kind of hit and miss. It took forever. I set up countless rings for years before he ever actually consented to getting in the ring and training me some. And then when I came back, what I could find was not the best training until I found Louis Tilley. And Louis was he was looking out for his self-interest. I was a big guy. He knew that I had the heart for it, and he knew that I could help him in the process. So, but I was lucky.
Yeah, it was very hard to get in the wrestling business. They'd beat you up, especially if you went to the territorial system.
Yep.
If you went to Georgia Championship Wrestling and said we want to be a wrestler, hey, ask Randy Rose. They beat Randy Rose up several times. He kept on coming back, but they beat him up several times in the 1970s or sometime around 1976, I think. They would beat him up on a regular basis, but he kept on coming back. And that's how they said, well, he's worth being a pro. Not everybody had to do that. Bob Armstrong didn't have to go through any of that. He didn't have to go through any of it. He was just a big old guy, and they looked at him and say, we can make some money with him. He never had any training to be a professional wrestler. He just had he actually just started one week, and he learned the wrestling business as being just wrestling. That's he never got trained. So
they would put him in the ring with people who were experienced.
Yes, that is true.
That's the key.
Charles Alford said somebody had to put them over as well. When we're talking about getting people over, yes, that's what they that was very important.
Magnum TA when he was on with us, he talked about the Midnight Express, and he understood that. I mean, he understood it well. The deal between he and Two was also helpful with the Midnight Express and getting them over. It was very important. And I don't believe the Midnight Express would have gotten over as well if it wasn't for Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA.
Yeah, and I think Wrestling 2 was the key to the whole thing, to getting them over, because Wrestling 2 was already over. And he helped get them over. He helped get the heat that they needed.
Sure. And if you haven't seen those matches with 2 and TA against the Midnight Express, there's one from the Sam Houston Coliseum you simply have to see. It is awesome match.
Rick Brooks said, I believe Brett Sawyer has reopened Mad Dog's Palace. What is that? What is Mad Dog's Palace?
I guess that's the training school that Buzz had at one time. I wonder if he's going to cheat people the way Buzz did.
Oh.
I mean, it's tradition. Did I say that out loud? I meant to.
Oh, man. Let me cry over here. Joe Bateman, Hollywood Hogan didn't want to pass the torch. You know, he did pass the torch. He did pass it. He passed it to Ultimate Warrior. Yep. That was just a stupid choice of passing the torch to somebody. Now, he did what Vince McMahon wanted him to do, because look at how many people that Vince McMahon asked Hulk Hogan, asked that they put him over, that put Hogan over. So he did what he was asked to do. I just don't think that was the right person. I didn't think it. What WrestleMania was that? Do y'all remember? Was it 7?
6, I think.
Yeah.
WrestleMania 6. I never thought Ultimate Warrior could ever get there. And Ultimate Warrior didn't care if he was a champion or not. He was talking to WCW at the time that he was a champion. So, I mean, he was all about the money. And you can't blame him. He was all about making the money.
Sure.
And they were going to give him big time money.
Well,
I don't know why.
And that was, again, about the same time that I said the pendulum had swung into the wrestlers' way of thinking and the way and their side. Yep. And they were able to command big amounts of money, and they were willing to pay them. And I don't begrudge them at all.
I don't know why he didn't take the deal, because
he made some major unreasonable demands.
Well, that's
true. They just couldn't. And the one where I will not do a job is just not acceptable at all.
No. Stuart Kemp said we lost about a decade. What was he talking about in that? Do y'all know?
We're talking about he's talking about the development of wrestling at that time, and he's I think he's about right. Even though I don't think they ever recovered from it. We had after that debacle, the only 2 real stars after that was Steve Austin and The Rock. Yep. And after that, they've been just kind of lackluster from that point on.
Well, for one reason, John Cena was they kind of try to put The Rock and then Stone Cold Steve Austin together, and they try to and you could tell it. It was not a genuine thing until later on when he actually became a genuine person. But at the beginning, he just became.
He was trying to do The Rock. He had this 5-knuckle shuffle when The Rock had the people's elbow. It was just sad. It was very sad.
Yeah, it was. Bob Welch, one of our supporters, by the way. And while we're talking about supporting, I think, Jack, we better tell everybody about supporting the channel, because we got a lot of things coming up. So we may need some assistance in taking care of some of those things. And by the way, hello, Bob Welch. You all are very knowledgeable. Thank you so much. All right, Jack.
Insider Nation, you can support us for $2.99 a month if you'll go to our Facebook page. Right there at the very top, there's a little bar that goes across that says Become a Supporter. And what you get from 7 p.m. to 7:25 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Monday, we go live to talk pro wrestling with supporters only. Monday nights from 8:20 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, watch us record videos for YouTube, and then we continue talking wrestling. Tuesday night, 8:20 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, watch us record a video for YouTube, and again, we continue talking wrestling. We also have posts to help us decide what we discuss, posts for supporters on Fridays and Saturdays, and personal updates on upcoming live events, interviews, virtual events, etc.
And by the way, during the supporter thing next week, we will tell you before everybody else knows what we have planned for Friday, October 4th. You will know first what we have planned for that.
Second, because I know first.
Well, that's true. That's Rodney does too. So you'll be the third group of people.
Yeah.
Now let's get back to what everybody has to say. Charles asked this question, and he asked this. He said, compare and contrast the cost of travel in Georgia and Mid-South. completely different because think about it. Mondays, you went to Augusta, Georgia. So you lived in Atlanta. You drove to Augusta. Gas was probably, what, $20 back then? Maybe you fill up your gas. Maybe not even $20.
Probably not even $20.
Probably 10.
Tuesdays, you go to Macon, Georgia. Drive back home to Atlanta. Wednesdays, you go to Columbus, Georgia. Drive back to Atlanta. Thursday, you were either in Rome, Georgia, Albany, Georgia, Athens, Georgia. Sometimes they ran all three of them towns. And then Friday, you were in Atlanta. Saturday, you did TV. Saturday, you either went to Carrollton, Griffin, or later on Chattanooga. Sunday, you were in Marietta. So it didn't cost a lot. Now, swing over to Louisiana. You were living in Pineville, Alexandria, Louisiana. Most people were. And so then you're on Mondays, you're going to New Orleans. Then you're going back. Tuesdays, you're going to Baton Rouge or Jackson, Mississippi. Wednesday, you're going to Monroe, Louisiana, or they run every other week. Maybe somewhere in Texas, the latter part of Texas. I think Lake Charles, Louisiana, Beaumont, Texas might have been on those days.
Houston.
I would say you might have spent $40 a week, $50 in gas. You might have spent $200 a week in gas.
Yeah, because he traveled. They went all the way up to Little Rock, Arkansas, and that was not a short trip from Alexandria. And then you'd go to Biloxi, Mississippi. It's not a short trip from Alexandria. And most of the time, I do not remember anybody staying over a lot. It just seemed like everybody came back to wherever their home base. DiBiase lived in Jackson, and some lived in Baton Rouge. Seemed like some of them lived in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, I believe there's a possibility Jim Cornette lived in Baton Rouge. I'm not for sure. Mickey Mayfield has a big shout out for us. He said a big shout out to you guys for calling us insiders or fans. Sadly, many podcast shows referred to as marks and losers. I hate that word. We've always hated the word marks, and we wouldn't call people losers.
Except when we're talking about the people who are running WCW.
Yep, corporate guys. Corporate guys are idiots, losers, and marks.
That's right. That's right.
Fans
we degrade them.
Fans are never marks.
Nope. We always respected wrestling fans. We had the biggest arguments with World Championship Wrestling officials over calling wrestling fans stupid. I don't know how many times that we told those people. By the way, that's probably the reason they got rid of us. But
exactly right.
Because we did not like it, and we told them we didn't like it. That wrestling fans are very smart. Wrestling fans know what's good. Wrestling fans know what's bad. And when they're bad, that's the reason you're drawing 200-300 people. And I remember in Bristol, Tennessee, they didn't draw but 300 or 400 people in that big building in Bristol. And I said, well, the reason is because you think you're smarter than the wrestling fans. No, they're smarter than you because they didn't pay a ticket to come see this crap. And so there's the key.
The exact words.
Well, right. I might have used some profanity back then. I don't use profanity anymore. But let's see. Joel Bateman said something about Bobby Heenan. I think, Jack, you already. But he said Bobby Heenan should have been a head booker of WC. I think I agree with that. I don't think he wanted it.
No, I think that's one reason why he was never in the equation. He did not want that heartache that came with it.
Oh, can you imagine?
That was a lot of responsibility.
I mean, we didn't really get into it with Kevin Sullivan last night because that would probably be a part of what's in the book, Wrestler's Wrestler. Can you imagine having to put up with Hall and Nash? Can you imagine the fights that he had to have with those to try to get just a little bit of what he wanted?
Now, Kevin Nash got mad because I got his weight wrong in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. And that was whatever town. It wasn't Kosciuszko, Mississippi, but it was some town that Doug McKay ran. And I can't remember what town that was now. Louisville, Mississippi, maybe Louisville, Mississippi, because I got his weight wrong. Goodness gracious!
Well, I mean, think about you're having to deal with
more than that. You need to worry about how you wrestle instead of
when I'm in the book position, I have to know that if a guy doesn't want to do what has to be done, what's required of him, what's asked of him, then I have to know that I can fire that guy. I don't care if he's the main event guy. He's
exactly
gone.
Right.
You didn't have that at WCW.
No.
Those guys were paying, they had long-term contracts. They had to be there. You had to use them. And then you have to convince them to do business the right way. It was just, it was a formula for failure.
Yes.
Yes, badly. That's the reason I stayed out of the dressing room.
The Steiners. I mean, you had the Steiners that were just awful.
They were. Oh, they were horrible. Victor Nash said it was bad creative writing in WWF. As the years went by, I think
I think during that Attitude Era, it was probably some of their best writing because it had to be. Yeah. And when they didn't have competition anymore, from 2001 on until about 2010, you can just almost watch the decline in the quality of the show. And just since then, the last 10, 12 years, it's just like, let's try this.
There's the old dartboard effect. What is going on now in WWE is what happened in the territory.
Yep.
It was throwing darts at a dart. I can remember sitting in a meeting and asking two people that were over the deal. I wanted to see their book, and I wanted to know what they were going to do 13 weeks from now. And they didn't even have it. They didn't even have the town down. We ran Birmingham every Monday. They didn't even have the town wrote down 13 weeks from now in Birmingham, Alabama. So, they couldn't have been figuring out what's going to happen.
Wrestle South is a small show. I know what we're doing by January of next year already. Wow. You have to. You have to.
That's, booking 101. We're going to be talking about booking as we leave here. We're going directly to the supporter deal. We're going to talk about basically promoting wrestling and how it could be done today compared to what it was done years ago, and booking of years ago and how they do it today. And we're going to have to go there in about 3 minutes.
Hey, one quick question. Mickey Mayfield put up there, how many times did your wrestlers go to the wrong town on the wrong night, and what was their excuse? And I have a great story about that because it just happened this week. At Wrestle South, we were supposed to be there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At 5:30, one of my guys, I've still not seen him. So I call him. I said, "Where are you at?" He says, "Well, I'm an hour out." And I said, "Dude, call time's 3 o'clock. Where are you at?" And he told me some other town. He said, "You sent me their address." And I said, "Okay, well, why is it taking you so long?" He said, "Well, I went 2 hours away." He went to the wrong town. I said, "How did you get that?" I even sent him the thing on the link of how to map to get to where we're at. And so he finally comes in, he has his match, and he come back there, and he said, "How was it?" I said, "It was great." He said, "When am I booked back?" I said, "You're not." so yeah, it happened.
By the way, Pat Rose sent us Set the Hook with Pat Rose. If you've not listened to his show, you gotta watch his show, Set the Hook with Pat Rose. He said his birthday is May 23rd. He said, "Please keep all gifts below 100."
And what he means is 99.50.
That's right.
Well, happy birthday, May 23rd, Pat Rose. Let's see. I'm just trying to pick up some people that maybe we didn't see. Jason Monday, hi from North Carolina. Keep up the great work, guys. Thank you so much, Jason. Let's see. Speaking of crazy, the missing link was crazy. Victor Nash said that. And we got a lot of stuff, but we're running out of time. Norman Carr is on here with us. He said if A&W would have Omega and Chris Jericho do New Japan-style matches, the ratings would go through the roof. I don't know why they've changed them, but boy, they have changed what they do. I don't get it.
Well, it goes right back to what we were talking about earlier in this program. The pendulum is well in the back pockets of Mr. Jericho. All right, it's not anybody making any decisions. They're calling their own shots over there, and before long, they will be just as WCW, a thing of the past.
Oh, George Lambert, Bill Masters said, "Don't get me started on Brett Williams." I called him one time. I'll tell this story real quick, and then we got to go. I called him one time and I said, "Hey, Ben, how you doing? This is Brent West." He said, "What? Who'd you say?" He said, "Because I thought you said Brett Wayans." He said, "I was going to cuss you out." I was just like, man, I was asking him about Bambi. I think I was going to book her on a show or something. And I'm thinking, man, he's going to cuss me out for asking about Bambi. All right, guys, we've got to get off of here. We've got to go over to the supporter channel.
Richard, you're exactly right. The WCW inmates were running the asylum. Same things happening in AEW.
A quick plug, ProWrestlingTees.com, Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. Go over there and buy our T-shirts. And look, it's the Cooker, the greatest punch in the history of pro wrestling. Bob Cook has his own T-shirts over there now. Go buy you one.
By the way, I believe who told him he had the best punch in professional wrestling was Cowboy Bill Watts.
He did.
Cowboy Bill Watts said that. So,
and he wasn't wrong.
No, he was not wrong. Bob Cook, how you doing? And we hope you can get you a shirt of Bob Cook. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. We have reached over 29,000 insiders on our Facebook page. We are creeping up on 1,500 subscribers. So if you've not on YouTube, if you've not subscribed to YouTube, because what we're going to do on Friday, October 4th, will only be on YouTube. So make sure you get over there and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you so much. And for those of you who are supporters, we'll see you in just a moment. And we'll see you next week as we continue our look at the history of professional wrestling and some things in the future. We'll see you next week.